Welcome to SpringLaw's Spring Forward Legal Updates webinar series. This series is designed to provide a comprehensive legal overview of key issues related to employment law and human rights in Ontario. SpringLaw is a virtual employment law firm advising on workplace legal issues for employers, employees, freelancers, and executives from a wide range of industries. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar and find it useful and informative. To reach our team, please visit us at springlaw.ca. And now to our presenters.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening if you're listening to this afterwards on our YouTube channel. I'm Lisa Stam, and I'm one of the co-presenters of this webinar. I'm presenting with my colleague, Calvin Tu, one of the employment lawyers on our team. So thanks for joining us, everyone, on this month's webinar, AI and the Future of Work. I'm super excited about this topic, so I think it's going to be a fun session. For those who are new to our webinars, welcome. We are a virtual Canadian law firm specializing in employment law and contracts law. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar. We have a chat going, we have it open and ready to go, and we will try and get to your questions as we go to keep this as dynamic as we can. If we can't get to your questions, just ping us afterwards and we'll follow up with you after the webinar. You can download the slides through the software if you'd like to take a look at some of the content afterwards. And otherwise, please come to our website where we have our award-winning weekly blog posts, a link to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, and information on our innovative subscription program for employers, as well as some DIY products. Okay, so that's my pitch for the firm. Let's get started. First of all, I want to introduce you to Calvin. Calvin is a former journalist and news anchor with a strong interest in technology, and he brings this unique perspective to workplace innovation and communication. He has an interest in tech and entrepreneurship and experience in drafting contracts for startups and founders. Yes, he's even built his own computer, so he's like the real thing here. he just brings this thoughtful lens to AI in the workplace, and I'm excited to be presenting with him today. So Calvin, welcome to your first webinar with SpringLaw.
Hey, everyone.
No pressure. Okay, before we begin, of course, we always want to start each of our sessions with a land acknowledgement. We do acknowledge that we are on land, that the land on which we operate is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat people, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who have stewarded these lands for generations. We recognize that Indigenous peoples lived and thrived here long before the arrival of settlers, and we acknowledge the lasting impact of colonialism. And as part of our commitment to truth and reconciliation, we strive to learn, to unlearn, and to understand the history and effects of these wrongs. We are grateful to live and work on this land. For those who attend our webinars regularly, you know we always have to have this disclaimer. This is all legal information, not legal advice. If you have any specific nuances or facts that you would like us to talk to you about and give you some legal advice, then contact us afterwards. But today it's all general legal information. Okay, today we are going to talk about hiring with the help of AI, managing your workforce with AI, future-proofing your workplace and AI, and then exiting or terminating employees and where AI fits into that. If this topic is of particular interest to you, by the way, we did a webinar on AI in the workplace a year ago, June 2024. A little bit of a different angle on all of it. We had a guest speaker joining us. But we also write a bunch of blog posts on this. So go onto our website, to our blog, to learn more if this is an interest, a topic of interest. So before I hand things over to Calvin, let's do a poll. I just want to get a sense of the room and where people are at. So let me see if I'm doing this correctly. I might need to adjust my screen here a bit. Can everybody see? No, you cannot see the poll. Let me launch it first. All right. How is your organization using AI in your human resources? With hiring, with management, with terminations, with other, not using it at all? Ooh, we've got a winner coming quickly here. Yeah, some hiring. There we go. Managing. I'm not surprised, not in terminations yet. We will talk about that when we get there. And the deep discomfort every employee will probably eternally have with any sort of robot deciding their exit fate. Okay, so so not a lot, but some are using it in others. So I'm curious if you can drop in the chat what other is. I'm interested in that. Oh yeah, I'll end the poll. Let's share the results here. A bit of a cross section, but yeah, hiring a bit actually equal between hiring and management. That's interesting to me. Okay, so still not wide adoption, which is not surprising because we are in early years with AI. Okay, Calvin, over to you to talk about hiring with the help of AI.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa, and it's very good to be here with all of you. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk about how to cover AI being used in recruitment and job applications. As Lisa mentioned, we're going to move on to human rights and fairness issues, how to address them, and how you can use AI to promote equity in your organization. And I'm going to begin, before getting to some statistics, I'm going to begin by talking about two common problems that we all face. One is you put out a job application. I know many of you have been through this, and you get inundated with applications. You put out a job posting, rather. You get inundated, like 100 applications. Many of them aren't even tailored to you. You're wondering, how am I going to look through all of these? The other problem, I've been through this, you put out a job posting and no one applies. And you're wondering, what is going on here? Where have all the good applicants gone? So on the next slide, let's talk a bit about why this is happening. A big part of this is that AI used by job seekers is on the rise. And I want to note that a lot of the data here is American, but that's where the technological advancements are happening. It's good foreshadowing of what will happen here. And it helps us prepare because, as you mentioned, a lot of you aren't using AI yet, but that is coming. For sure, that's coming. So we know from statistics in the States that most job seekers there are already using AI in their job search. They're using it to help write their cover letter, their resume, to prepare for interviews, for career guidance. So that means that when you put out a posting and you get a job application from someone, there's a good chance either now or down the road in the very near future that that applicant has used AI in some way. Now, is this bad? Not necessarily. We're going to talk a bit about that on the next slide. It's just another tech tool, very powerful tool. Remember when spell check came out? There were some people biased against using that, word processing as well. But now they're just another tool that we have in our belt. So hiring managers, let's look at how they are viewing this. We can see that a lot more than half of hiring managers in the States in this particular survey said they dislike AI-generated resumes. In fact, in the list of red flags of things that they would see that would make them not hire someone, such as poor formatting or irrelevant content, AI-generated resumes were the #1 flag. So as we're going through this section, I want you to think, how do you feel about applicants using AI? And I'm asking this because on the next slide, we'll see that a lot of employers are actually using AI in their hiring process. It's becoming something that both sides use. The vast majority of Fortune 500 companies are using, and this survey called it an applicant tracking system. It's basically a fancy word saying it looks at the resumes submitted, sorts them, and then filters out the ones that are not relevant to you. Basically, it's AI-assisted hiring. And so this is all, we'll see on the next slide, this has all affected the hiring process in terms of the sheer number of applications that people can put out. A lot of job seekers are sending dozens of applications each week, and a lot of people who are hiring, and you may have noticed this, if not, you will notice this, an increase in applications. Part of that is it's hard for people to find jobs these days in many fields, and because AI is in some ways making it quicker for them to apply to jobs, beneficial to them, of course, it can slow down the hiring process. And this is a good case why it would be good for you to consider using AI to help you as an employer, to look through those applications and sort through them for you. Do the initial search. This is where AI can help you, not replace you, because you don't want it making the final decision, but it can help you. Now, let's move on to the next slide. And there are other effects of AI-assisted hiring that we want to talk about. The effects on who gets hired. Now, a lot of this is not new. I'll sum it very briefly. We already knew 10 years ago that Amazon scrapped a hiring algorithm for software engineers that preferred male candidates. It downranked resumes that had any hint of being a woman, such as being a member of a women's rugby club. Why did it do that? This is not a problem specific with AI per se. And we know that because even before AI came on the scene, discrimination was already happening in hiring. Discrimination is part of our society that we try to combat. It's been shown, for example, we know that racialized names on resumes tend to get fewer callbacks. This has been well studied, but how does discrimination get incorporated into AI? Well, it all comes down to an old computer science principle, garbage in, garbage out. What that means is the AI just takes the information you feed it, and it takes that as that's what you want. So in Amazon's case, their workforce of software engineers was largely male. They gave it those resumes, that information, and so it thought, hey, I have to find a man, right? So in many cases, bias and discrimination is unintentional, but that's how it happens in AI. AI automates it. Of course, all of this is leading to some trouble. Now, there aren't any Canadian court cases yet, but we'll see on the next slide that there have been disputes over AI use going through the US courts. Just last year, CVS, it's a big, like kind of like a, I guess a Shoppers Drug Mart, they settled a class action lawsuit against them over the AI use of AI in job interviews. And the plaintiff in that case, he alleged that the AI system was using his facial expressions, analyzing them, and then coming up with an employability score. What happened is he had applied for a job and didn't get the job. He only found out about it afterwards. And the lawsuit claimed that this amounted to a lie detector test on job applicants, which is actually illegal under US law. Now, since this case was settled, we don't have a judge's decision on whether the use of AI in the situation was illegal or problematic, but it brings up an important point. When you're using AI, think about the problem you want to solve. In this case, was the problem, hey, we need a system to help read people's facial expressions? Probably not. If you want to implement AI, that's something that a human can do, but AI is very useful in other cases. Now, in the second case I want to quickly look over, this is against Workday, and they provide AI platforms to like human resources management systems to medium and large sized businesses, many in the States. So in this case, the plaintiff claimed that he was rejected for more than 100 jobs because the hiring algorithm discriminated against race, age, and disability. We don't have yet a decision on this because it hasn't gone to trial yet. So we're going to be following this very closely. And we'll, of course, give you any updates as they come out. The important lesson is that we should never trust AI systems blindly on their own. They're an assistant to help us, appropriately named like Windows Copilot. It's not the pilot and we're sitting in the back seat and we're letting it make the decisions. You need to be active in the process. So how do you do that? And on the next slide, we'll go over some things that you should do when you're looking at an AI system. You want to ask the company that's selling the system if they've accounted for fairness and equity and how they've done that. Make sure the system is transparent. Make sure it shows you how it makes decisions. You don't want a system to just make a decision like a black box and then it gives you something and you don't know how it arrived at that because you don't know if it could be arriving at that for the wrong reasons. You want to conduct regular audits to make sure that this is producing what you want. If you're open to this, request feedback from candidates. And you want to report when you find a bias that you think is something you think is a bias, report it to the company so that they're aware of that. You want a company that wants to take feedback from you. And then the last thing is you want a representative, a diverse group of decision makers in your workforce that are making hiring decisions. Easier said than done. And we're going to talk a bit about in a moment about how to do this. But, you know, a diverse set of decision makers is more finely attuned to bias and discrimination that can only happen to some people and not others. And so one tool you can go on right away, it's available now and it's free, is called Gender Decoder. It's based on research, and this tool checks your job advertisement. You basically copy it, paste it into here, I would recommend changing your company name, but it will tell you if the language in that job posting has words that are masculine or feminine coded. And this is based on research showing that gendered wording, of course, a lot of this is unintentional. It's just part of our culture, part of the English language, but gendered wording in job recruitment materials can maintain gender inequality. And so this is a good tool for you to use to try to make your postings more gender neutral. Big companies have used tools like this. Cisco reported that it attracted 10% more female applicants in its job postings by using something called Textio. It's a company, they have a variety of tools, and back then they were just a relatively new tech startup, but they have a slate of tools now. And one of the things they say is that it helps you write gender neutral, jargon-free job postings. And you can actually use ChatGPT to help with this too, rewording your job postings, making them more accessible, and hopefully less biased. This can address those issues of why aren't we getting the good applicants, and also diversifying a non-diverse workforce. And with that, I'll hand it to Lisa for our next topic.
Well, I just wanted to say, Calvin, you showed me this gender decoder tool, and I was playing around with it this morning, and it is really cool. You know, I put in some of our old job postings into it, and it did speak to whether or not it was going to be more appealing to women versus men. You know, I hope that we can gain more tools that go beyond that, right? So diversity beyond gender alone. And I hope we're not diving into stereotypes either of what is traditionally male or female, but there is a reality of AI having this really great upside of opportunity for really making the applicants, the job postings more diverse by language. And it's something that as an individual is so hard for us to know. We are all looking through our own lens to the world. So I found it a really good exercise. The other thing I just want to say is that Amazon case with the job postings and seeking out male candidates. This idea of historical data. This is I've said this before on a webinar, I know I have, but my feminist rant is that if we want to change the world and where we want to go, relying only on historical data, which Gen AI does by definition, right? That data that it can only rely on the data that's being inputted, and if that data is all retrospective and historic, how do you get to where we want to go, which is diversity and equality and a full range of voices at the table. So it's something that I think AI is becoming more and more attuned to. We've got some great big mistakes that have happened, and we all learn from that. So it's the Amazon, they actually say they never hired someone, they found the error before they actually went and made decisions on it. Let's hope that that's true. But that historical data set, it's a really interesting problem that we are constantly facing in the world of data stuff altogether. Okay, I'm going to jump into the next section on managing your workplace with the help of AI and how that might intersect with some of the things that you're doing. So when you're managing your workplace, 3 areas that come to mind for us are performance management, compliance and privacy risk issues, and future-proofing your workforce. So we're going to talk through each of these things. So first of all, managing with AI, it can be a really big opportunity. Most organizations are still using underusing generative AI. Only 6% of HR teams are using it or planning to use it, and we saw in the poll earlier what it looks like. An area of really good potential of AI is the feedback loop when managing employees. So according to BetterWorks, this is a company that provides AI HR tools, so it's one of many out there, but they had some good articles on this. They did a survey at the beginning of 2024. So in the world of AI, that's, I know, 1,000 years ago, but at the beginning of last year, only 16% of HR leaders were planning to implement Gen AI to support employee feedback and performance management. And then what I think pulls this together is if in their study, 20% of employees don't get regular conversations with their managers, and 40% receive no peer feedback. So that lack of feedback, that's where AI can really help fill that gap. AI can provide more real-time data, feedback to employees. The traditional method has always been very time-consuming, right? Either going through their files, consulting with peers, guessing a lot of the time. AI can really make it easier by providing HR managers and business owners with real-time metrics. So examples, task and project completion rates, response time metrics, client and peer quality score feedback, time allocation for project completion, goal progress tracking. These are all objective data points to help the employee know where they're at in their role. And it helps remove bias, subjective bias or manager perceptions. Maybe you don't really like this person personally, and yet they're doing all kinds of great things that you're not really seeing because you find them kind of annoying otherwise. But also these real-time data can help uncover some of your unsung heroes that are just quietly putting their head down and working. So having an objective way to grab the information in a time and cost-effective way, I think can be a really great opportunity for the use of AI. Yes, we can collect all these data points manually, but it's very time-consuming and often just doesn't get done because of that. Now, note that we're not talking about monitoring employees. This is about a feedback loop, and there may be a thin line there in many workplaces. The idea of monitoring your employee to make sure they're productive is a different topic, even though there might be some overlap of tools. This is really about HR feedback, performance management, and letting people know where they're at along the way. Another area that AI can really help identify patterns with overall management issues, tracking who's getting promoted or fired, and can help reduce bias in decision making. So let me unpack each of those. For identifying patterns, if you are tracking something like indicators of diversity on hire, so if you can survey each new employee and get a sense of gender, race, disability, and track that. Now, this can be done manually. If you hire 2 people a year, that can be manual for sure. But for larger organizations, this real-time data tracking can help be more accurate, more neutral, and help you see, okay, we really are, we need to improve our job ads, for example, because they seem to be skewed to a certain subset of the population, and we want diversity. Another area is looking at who's being promoted or fired in your organization. Again, are there patterns there? So AI and data-driven analytics can really help identify where there might be some patterns, who might be less successful, so that you gather that kind of data so that your human beings in the organization can do the analysis on the why of that. What barriers may exist to people succeeding in the organization, what language in the job post might be attracting too narrow of an applicant set, for example. Why are people not staying beyond a certain period of time, and are there patterns there? Historically, there are important drop-off points for women, for example, and I can speak to the legal industry, especially when there became time for equity partner, there would just be these drop-off points. And why? Looking at that, this is where we can gather data in an objective way to start thinking about it. The other big piece here is decision-making generally. The secret sauce to any good organization is to have objective, real data that's being analyzed by a human being. I mean, that really, on a Venn diagram, that's where you're going to get the best decision-making approach. And so we, for sure, continue to believe that humans need to be part of this journey and for most decisions. But by nature, we are biased. Human beings are biased. And the bigger problem is that half the time we're not aware of what we're being biased about. And so having that framework of data to use in order to make the decisions is so critical. And this is where using even just simple tools like ChatGPT to help pull out the data that you're looking for in certain reports that you may be running, for example. Now, this an issue that I just wanted to talk about here is that's related to managing employees and data. I've had this come up in another session I had done on speaking about AI. What do you do when an employee gets really good at using these tools, generative AI, or whatever other AI program you have going on, and they manage to cut their job in half, for example? They're being very innovative and they're being very smart about their tools. How do we manage that situation in the workplace? If their workload is now only 50%, is it time theft for the other 50%? Or do you reward them for, being an excellent employee and say, great, have a long lunch today? Part of this will all turn on that workplace culture and set of rules you have. Are you managing their success and deciding their success on the output, or is it input of like a churn of hours or a churn of calls, or is it the input that's driving success, or the metrics around success, or the output? And so I think this is a big picture sort of philosophical question that we're going to be dealing with in every workplace. If you've got people who are really good at AI and using the tools, usually their job will be more efficient. And obviously we're mostly talking about office workers, but not only office workers. But if you have a traditional management style in your organization where you're really looking at the hours that they're putting in each day and not taking into account the shortcut that AI can really produce and produce just as good or better work, how do we compensate these people? So we are in early days. I have no brilliant answer for this yet. Check in a couple of months or a year, maybe we'll see some fallout. There's zero case law dealing with this yet, but I do anticipate that we're going to see some pain points around this of managing your workplace and figuring out, okay, they're not doing 40 hours anymore, but they're putting out what was the output of 40 hours. So, obviously the other side of that is, do you start laying people off, or do you start bundling tasks? And we will get to the issue around job security as we go. But for now, this is just about this idea of using your real-time data to manage people. It's going to need a shift of approach on this issue. Calvin, did you have anything to add to that by any chance?
No, very eloquently put.
Okay. It's just, I can see it definitely having a big impact in workplaces. Okay, I'm going to move on to some legal stuff. What are some of the laws that might be addressing the use of AI in our workplace? Nothing yet, really, to a large degree. We had this Bill C-27 that was a very big, comprehensive piece of legislation that has died on the table. It included this Comprehensive Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, or AIDA, which, for anyone who's an opera fan, there are no elephants involved, unfortunately. But it is this. It had a tribunal. It was as big as PIPEDA in terms of the overall scope, but it died with the last Parliament. So we'll see what happens. All the work that was put into it was a ton of work. I have no doubt it'll just show up in something else. We did notice that in the Prime Minister and Mark Carney's new cabinet, there's a new minister portfolio called the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation in Canada. Evan Solomon is the MP for that now. And earlier this month, he had mentioned moving away from indexing on warnings and regulation and being overly legalistic, which is what Bill C-27 was. It really was a framework of how to govern AI and protect and constrain to some extent and adjudicate. So we'll see. Very early days for the government, for to see where we go on regulating AI in Canada. Evan Solomon talks about wanting to focus more on how can AI benefit the economy in light of areas around the world where they're less fussed about regulation. the US and China, for example, huge economic engines, and whereas an economic region like Europe is way ahead of all of us on how to regulate this properly to balance everyone's individual and business rights. So there is so much work to be done in here. We really just don't have any law yet for regulating how we deal with AI in Canada. Now, we do have privacy law in Canada, kind of. Right? So we also have had this patchwork of privacy laws across the country. If you are in the healthcare sector, then you're covered. You know, there's the PHIPA, the Personal Health Information and Protection Act, where we have really good laws on how to deal with health information. So that across the country. But outside of PHIPA and some government, you know, there's a Municipal Privacy Act, so government tends to be protected. But our private sector in Ontario has no Privacy Act. There are some privacy principles that might apply, and you know, if there is no legislation within the non-federal jurisdiction in Canada, then PIPEDA will apply, but PIPEDA expressly carves out private sector employees. So it's this weird patchwork for us. Now, Quebec, BC, Alberta, there's a couple of provinces in Canada that do have standalone privacy acts. So if you're calling in from another jurisdiction, you probably do have some privacy laws where you are. But privacy laws are really one areas that we have a little bit here and there that may impact the use of AI and help contain some of the risks associated with too much use of information into AI. But really, we're still in the Wild West, ultimately, unless you're dealing with sensitive medical information. One area that will be covered from the privacy law perspective, and probably will be an extension of AI regulation being captured within privacy law, is in a unionized environment. In the unionized environment, the arbitral case law has already embedded privacy principles and legal principles into every CBA by definition through the case law. So if you're in a unionized workplace, everything's amped up a little bit around privacy protection. But if you're a private sector, non-unionized workplace, we have a very big gap still, very big. Now, regardless of this gap, there is still always contract law that governs confidential business information. So regardless of whether or not you have written that into every single contract, there is all kinds of case law that will speak to the employer's right to have employees keep their business information confidential. You very much want to beef that up in your contracts anyways, but so that you can specify where some of these restrictions are. And so that is probably your main angle as an employer of where you can help deal with some of these sensitive leaks of information, is really focusing on, is this business confidential information? Probably not so much weight on privacy unless it's a medical thing. So, you still have some tools, but it's not going to be based in legislation pretty much. It's going to be based in case law around business confidential business information. Okay, the core issue around, so just to continue with that, a core issue around the risks that you hear put forward the most around the use of AI is, how do we protect confidential information? So first of all, we all want to be talking to our team. Never enter names or private details into any AI platform like ChatGPT. Update your policies to include AI use, train your team on confidentiality risks. Basically, you want to be educating your workforce on the importance of protecting confidential information, flagging for people exactly what is confidential information, why should it be protected, and how should they protect it. Honestly, I think most workplaces should really consider just accepting that AI is here and really invest in training your team on how to use it now in the early stages before it becomes such an all encompassing thing. just like your teenagers, if you ban all drinking, they will just go and drink their face off. And so in the same way with employees, you want to be teaching moderation and understanding how does AI actually pull in confidential information when it's being trained on models that are now released to the universe. Explaining that to employees and really giving them tools on how to use generative AI that protects confidentiality. So there's lots of ideas. If you're going to put in like a policy or some sort of workflow that you want to throw into ChatGPT to clean up, strip the confidential information, throw it into a Word doc or a GDoc first, take it all out and put in things like company A, company B, employee A, employee B, so that you're masking identifying information to keep it generic, and then throw that into ChatGPT. The other big thing is, we should all be exploring enterprise level or workplace versions of these tools, because they are more in tune with ring fencing data within your organization, so that the rest of the world isn't seeing it. And we are seeing a lot of organizations are raising all these concerns of their deeply confidential information not being, not having the models trained on that and disseminated to the world. So, there are assurances. I know when we have an enterprise version of ChatGPT and it says that it's not training on models, I hope it's true. But, we are in such early days. We still don't put any confidential information into our ChatGPT type Gen AI tools, because you just never know. And so but we use it extensively, right? But then just be careful with what you're putting into it. So are there any other new laws about AI? Really, there's only the one, another one of the Working for Workers Act that came out in March of this year. So this one it passed in March. This one speaks to using AI in your hiring decisions. So if you are an organization that uses any AI in your job postings, for example, or in your screening, your assessing, you're selecting applicants, as of January 1, 2026, you have to put that on the job ad. You have to disclose to the candidates that you're using AI. It will not apply to generic ads like, hey, we're hiring, come on out. It's more the specific detailed candidate roles, and it's for workplaces with employees with 25 or more employees. So it doesn't apply to everyone, but it's the beginning of how really disclosure of use of AI is your best friend when it comes to using any of these tools. A last slide I have before I move on to Calvin's next section on future-proofing. In unionized workplaces, if you are one of our clients that have a unionized workplace, check your CBA, your collective bargaining agreement. There was likely going to be a provision in there that restricts an employer from rolling out new technology that significantly affects job duties or conditions, or at the very least has to give advance notice to the union. So it could be that rolling out certain more significant AI tools will require bargaining, or you're breaching the collective bargaining agreement. So keep an eye on that. Absolutely expect resistance from your union if you're rolling out any tool that may lead to job losses or job security generally. And the big thing to keep in mind is the big unions out there are very much on top of it. So there are no, you can't sneak this in at all if you're in a unionized workplace. Just one example, CUPE has a very detailed program on coaching their union reps about how to deal with AI and AI or anything that touches that tech provision of the CBA, and certainly anything around monitoring employees. So much of our case law around video surveillance or general FOB surveillance, any of that, often it's coming out of the labor arbitration decisions, because it's dealt with readily by unions. So if you are in a unionized environment, absolutely feel free to give us a call to give you a hand on this one, because you are up against big well-informed unions who are looking to roll this out. To roll it out in a way that doesn't impact job security, but we all know AI is going to be shifts in the market for sure. I just want to do a quick check-in as we're halfway in the chat. Okay, I think we're good to go. If anybody has questions, please feel free to roll them in as we go. Calvin, over to you about future-proofing workplaces.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And yeah, so let's move on to how to future-proof your workforce. And we're talking about preparing for the impact of AI on jobs, on skills, and on employee relations. So the first thing we want to talk about is that change is happening. We know it, and employees know it too. There's a recent poll that shows that more than a fifth of American employees are concerned that they're going to lose their jobs to generative AI. And 4 years ago, that number was 15%. So this is on a growing number of people's minds. AI is resulting in workforce cuts at big companies. Microsoft recently reduced its workforce by 3%, and Duolingo said it would replace some contractors with AI. AI is expected to transform the global workforce by 2050. And experts estimate that more than half of current jobs are going to require significant adaptation because of AI. Some jobs could be automated. The thing is, I don't want you to be afraid. Technology has come before and changed things, and it has been for the better. Think about the word processor just a few decades ago. Some people thought it would be a bloodbath. But look at the way it's made our lives easier in terms of producing, in terms of going through our work days. Think of smartphones that two decades ago didn't even exist. We didn't even conceive of such a thing. But we've all learned to use these tech tools, and they've helped us do more things quicker and in many cases better. So we will get through this AI revolution together. That's for sure. So let's look at some of the jobs that you could think about using AI, at least as part of it. Some administrative jobs that are highly repetitive can be automated. And a good one is scheduling. You know, when you call some kind of office and you get a busy signal, well, just to book an appointment, well, you don't want your customers calling you and not being able to book an appointment with you. And so this is a great way if you want to automate scheduling. You can free up administrative staff to take on other tasks that are maybe more pressing, that require human intervention. Customer service is another thing that some companies are rolling out. You don't want to replace your customer service team, but maybe this is a tool that can help them. It can give people a heads up as to, hey, these are the articles that you can read on our website that may help you. Some people may not want to pick up the phone and call you. So these are some of the ways that AI can help change jobs. Some jobs, of course, on our next slide, are clear that they're harder to automate. Empathy-based roles, like patient-facing roles, nursing, therapy, social work, high-level management jobs that need emotional intelligence, adaptability, and decision-making, jobs that involve legal analysis and advocacy. These are things that AI is not ready to take on because you need that human in control, that human discretion that AI doesn't have, the emotional intelligence, the empathy. AI doesn't have these things. Labor-intensive careers like construction and trades, you need people for that. And then there are fields like teaching and philosophy, teaching where you're gearing lesson plans to students, where you need to be creative, where you need to account for other things, the human elements of things, philosophy. These are some things that are harder to automate using AI. And on the next slide, we're going to see that some jobs can be augmented. And we're talking about not replacing, but assisting. Human resources, that's the thing we're talking about today. That's why we're all here. AI can make big changes in human resources. It can help you a lot. And there's a list of other jobs that may or may not be in your company that can be assisted with AI. And the list, as time goes on, is growing. So on the next slide, let's talk about how you can adapt your business. Because this change is coming. It's not a matter of if, It is a matter of when. So we want to be prepared. The first thing is be transparent. Employees are going to be nervous. So you want to tell your people from the start how you plan to implement AI. Tell your workers how you plan to train and support them, two things that you need to do. The key here is not to think about replacing people off the bat, but to balance the power of AI with human potential, because the two together can perform better than each individually. So we'd recommend performing a workplace analysis. Look at the changes that your workforce has undergone in recent years. What areas do you think you're going to have a greater need, and what trends are affecting your industry? Think about the positions that need to change, and think about whether you're going to need to create new positions. Think about how you can make jobs more efficient. And one way to think about this is to break down jobs into sets of tasks. Think about which you can automate with AI or augment and which you can't. And then determine which skills are going to remain important and then which skills are going to be replaced by AI. The key here is to consider first reskilling or upskilling your workforce instead of just jumping to reducing your workforce. Experts caution that it is short-sighted to let people go as a first course of action. Instead, offer internal mobility. Remember, these are people who've, in many cases, have been with you. They understand things that AI will not. They understand organizational culture. They understand client needs. These are things that you can't replace. Encourage and require ongoing learning. Now, this is more important than ever before as technology continues to change. Look at programs that are available to train your employees on how to use AI, because remember, it's just like you need to be trained to drive a car, just like you need to be trained to use a computer program, you need to be trained to use AI, to use it properly. Remember to avoid bias and discrimination, as we talked about earlier, and also to be sure that you're getting the outputs that are actually useful for you. And so consider giving employees a few hours each month of self-directed training if there are no programs available, and give them a budget, considering giving them a small budget so that they can get this training on their own. And remember, like we said, this change is coming. So don't think about whether we're going to be affected. We are going to be affected. And the next thing I want to cover is AI policies. So as AI use increases, you're going to need these policies, and Lisa talked about them earlier, to make sure that AI is being used properly in your organization. Just like you need attendance, discipline, vacation policies, many of you have these already, you're going to need an AI policy, and that's what we can help you with. Now, a good policy has the following features. It has many features. It protects your company's confidential information. It addresses bias and discrimination concerns. It ensures that you disclose the use of AI where you have to the public, for example, and internally. Sometimes you want to label documents created with AI that they were created with AI, so other employees know that this is how they were made. You may want to do that. A good policy makes sure that people have to verify AI-generated results. They don't just blindly rely on them. We've seen studies that people tend to over-rely on AI when they don't know how the decision's being made. So you want to make sure that anything generated with AI isn't just taken as truth. You need to make sure that humans verify this information, especially before it goes public. You want to make sure that humans are accountable for the results, that you don't just, well, AI produced it, it's not my fault. You want to make sure your employees are accountable for them. You want to prevent intellectual property disputes. You don't want the AI to be stealing people's ideas, stealing people's intellectual property. You want to make sure that confidentiality breaches are reported. And you also want to prohibit misuse. There are just like any technology, it can be used for good or bad. It can be used to imitate people, imitate their image, their voice, or their writing style. You don't want that, especially without people's permission. And so you want your policy to cover all these things. And so now that we've talked about ways that you can future-proof your workforce, I want to bring up our next poll. So this poll that we're just going to bring up now, how do you think your workforce is going to be affected by AI in the next 5 years? Let's maybe take part in this and see what you think. All right, so this is very telling. A lot of workers are going to need to be trained or reskilled, and that speaks to the importance of training and preparing.
Mhm. And then coming up with new jobs, right? There's still going to be, I mean, I think it's naive for us to think that there will not be jobs impacted by AI. Of course, there will be. Um, but, when I read this in some article, when spreadsheets first came out, everyone was very worried that that's like the downfall of bookkeeping and accountants because a spreadsheet can do all the work. We all know that is not the case. And there's also this one author I love, Richard Susskind. He's got this really neat chapter where he talks about a pub he likes in England that has all these pictures on the wall of obsolete jobs. So he gives a bunch of examples like the shoe cobbler, the candle maker, like all these jobs that don't really exist in that traditional way at all anymore. And yet we all use candles in the winter. We all wear shoes still. It's just that the job has changed into something else. So for the person who loves making candles and dipping the wick in the wax manually, that person's job just doesn't exist anymore as a livelihood. But there's all the other jobs that may exist in the production and shipping and selling and retail of candles, just as one example. So I am not afraid of AI, but there's absolutely going to be here, let me show the results. Sorry. There's absolutely going to be a big shift in our market right now. It's in our economy. It's happening right now in the same way that when the internet came out, it changed so many of our jobs. I think AI is a next level up of an even greater exponential impact, but with lots of wrinkles that we're working out right now. A lot, there's a lot of unanswered questions, but there's also a whole bunch of upside that we can really be thinking about. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. So, workers willing to be trained is probably the big one coming up, and then AI literacy. We have a couple of questions, so I'm going to go through that for a couple of these. Alice asked, "What AI are you using to track things like performance and data tracking?" So this is all going to be industry specific. It's industry and workplace specific. So. And I think I probably commingle AI and automatic a little too much. There are certainly tools that exist in, I don't know, QuickBooks and any sort of software you're already using for time tracking generally. It's easy enough to automate reports being sent to you. But the extra layer that AI can do is really extrapolate from a variety of sources that and use that predictive analysis to find patterns, which I think an automated report doesn't quite do. I'm not answering your question, as you can see, because the specific AI tools, I mean, there's just so many out there right now, some good, some bad, that are going to be really industry specific. Hi, Jenny said, thanks for hosting the webinar. It's one thing to promote AI literacy, but resistance is another. Many law firms and establishments are so skeptical about embracing AI. How can we strategically position AI literacy to be embedded by law establishments and organizations? That's a great question, because it's true that certainly industries like law we are trained to preserve the status quo. That's what case law is. We are trained to not change things because that's not how the common law works. But we are in a moment where we need the law to catch up to where we're at in terms of technology. And I think a lot of this is going to be around bringing some sense of comfort to the security of confidential information and the business case. Right? What's the monetary ROI on using AI, both for employee development, productivity, improvement, and just bottom line revenue? I think as soon as organizations, the large ones, start to see, oh man, our competition is outpacing us, and we could make more money. We live in that world. That's going to be a big driving factor for sure. But security of information, anytime I'm in a session with lawyers talking about AI, they cross-examine and interrogate the speaker about the security features of everything. So I know that it's a live issue for sure. Arlen Delisle. I went to law school with Arlen. So Arlen, thank you for asking this question. Are there examples you are willing to share about how SpringLaw is leading by example on these issues? Yes, Arlen is a friend, but this is truly not a planted question. We have done a whole bunch of AI functions over the years we use one program called Blue Jay Legal for doing reasonable notice calculations that we then, as our starting point, and then from there we do all the contextual analysis, which I'll speak to in a moment. And we also use ChatGPT quite a bit in a very carefully used way around stripping information. But that first round of, I don't know, just sometimes, for example, and HR probably will find this very helpful. If I'm in a crummy mood because of, some hard file with a very difficult opposing counsel, sometimes I need help writing a nicer email. And so I will write my email and then ask ChatGPT, rewrite this with a nicer tone, and you can just move faster when you use some of these tools as a first round of things, and then you apply all your human judgment onto that. Let's see, we'll do one more. How to use, so one more, and then I know that we're running out of time. I'm interested in the performance management piece, but I don't believe it was mentioned how to actually use AI for this, unless I missed this. Is there a particular tool, and also what information do you share with the tool? Okay, so again, this is an industry-specific thing. There are increasingly so many tools out there around of how to gather data and information on your employees. Disclosing that you're using a tool really is critical, especially in Canada. A lot of these tools are US-based, where there's a lot more flexibility outside of California to monitor your employees pretty carefully. And so, and that's just, we have too many privacy rules up here to be able to do that. So I agree, Lisa, that I'm not giving specific tool names. I'm happy to connect after and we can brainstorm together. How about I leave it at that, because it's so industry specific. Okay, I'm going to jump into our last section and sort of expedite it, because I think we covered most of the issues already. When it comes to terminating employees with the assistance of AI, key issues are employee perceptions, liabilities, and then how can we leverage. So not surprising, all the surveys out there talk about how deeply uncomfortable employees are with having AI determine whether they can be terminated. And this deep disconnect will not go away anytime soon. And so I think it's really up to HR, employers, employment lawyers to really keep staying in the mix and helping bring comfort that the process is fair, but we're just using tools to help with some of that objective data gathering. Nobody wants to be terminated by the robot, and I think that's not going away anytime soon. There's a couple of examples of the bigger tech companies using AI algorithms to generate automated reports. Amazon had an example a few years ago with their fulfillment center workers. They were sending out automated, and they probably still do this part, automated like productivity. They track the productivity about how many orders are being filled, and they send that out to the workers. There was an allegation that they had fired a bunch of people who were not meeting their quota. Amazon denies that they fired any of that in an automated fashion. But I think it speaks to the fact that we need to use the tools carefully and always have human judgment layered on top, both for accuracy and human perception. We are a workplace of human beings, and I think that has to stay part of it. When we're using AI in terminations, it is a moment already rife with liability and amplified emotions. So I think using AI very carefully in that moment is particularly important. So AI can help determine employee entitlements on termination. I mentioned a program that we have been using for a few years now, but we have to remember that it helps gather some ingredients, But then you need that HR or your employment lawyer to really help bake the cake now, because the nuances of any of these entitlements on termination are the human part of all this. So the goal is to have this package on the table to an employee that's that sweet spot of reasonable with a swift sign off, and then trying to have a much shorter negotiation period. And so coming up with the right package is important. And that's the nuances that AI can't catch yet, right? Like if they have recently been on a leave, or they've made references to a mental health issue to coworkers, or they talk openly about how they're going to appointments for their fertility, they're trying to get pregnant. I mean, there's a long list. And if you simply fire based on the robots algorithms, you're not taking into any of these algorithms. Absolutely embrace AI, but we need that human judgment as part of it, especially in the termination stage. A last comment I have, I'm going to skip the poll. We were going to do one more poll, but I'm going to skip that, Calvin and Mandeep, in the interest of time. An observation that we are increasingly seeing is that employees are coming to the table with their lawyer, ChatGPT, and so they are getting all kinds of free information, right? And demand letters and analysis from Gen AI that they're using when they're negotiating with their employer. The upside of that is that the employees are coming, we can all start ahead a little bit, right? They've got their head around some of the basics. They quickly learn, for example, that if they've been there for 3 years, they're not going to get $2 million like they might see in some headlines in the States, because it's a different system up here. On the other hand, it's really hard to get employees to shift their position if they're entrenched in this legal right that they now believe that they have, especially things around damages, punitive damages. Very rarely do employees get bad faith damages in Canada. You have to be really awful in that termination to get it. The law already contemplates that people are going to be a little bit upset and a little bit, hurt by the termination. That's all normal. That doesn't give rise to all these damages. And I think we've seen a couple of circumstances now where employees come and they're entrenched in their position because they've seen it in black and white. But ChatGPT and all these Gen AI tools, they are pleasers. They give you the output that it thinks you want. And so if an employee is putting in information like, how can I get the most bad faith damages from my employer? It's going to give you a great answer that's going to support the employee, but not necessarily reflect the law. So we're seeing this right now, the use of AI on the employee side. Early days, and I don't have an answer to this yet. It's just more of an observation of how do we ensure that there's still that legal analysis coming in there without forcing people to go see a lawyer, but recognizing that ChatGPT is not the end answer at all at this point. Okay, wrap up. I think I've answered most of the questions. The big picture here is AI can really save time. It can really promote fairness and equity, and this is why there is a really big upside to tech. Everyone, we all need to be thinking about how do we adapt to our workforce, how do we be proactive with our policies, and then really asking all these right questions before bringing in the AI tools so that you are fully aware of what you're bringing into the house and that you can just close that to your employees so that there's transparency about what you're using. We have tried to answer questions along the way. We did have a lot of content, so I apologize that we've skipped to the end and haven't been able to answer all the questions. If anybody does have any other questions for us, please feel free to contact us afterwards. I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. Our next session is going to be on September 17. We don't do these in the summer. Everyone's out and about at their cottages. So now our next session is in September. It'll be on ESA changes and upcoming workplace legal changes. So a good nuts and bolts type of session to get you going for the fall season. Please feel free to ask any questions and then go to our website, springlaw.ca. for our blog and for some of the resources we have there. Please follow us on social, sign up for our newsletters to stay updated, and we'll see you in September. Calvin, thank you for all of your wisdom today.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for coming.